Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to the Economic Development meeting tonight. Call to order. We've got myself and Councilman Watts Huckabee and Councilwoman Allison Love. Order of business. The first piece of this is a discussion around small business support efforts. And, I guess I want to turn it over to yourself.
Yep, that would be great.
Process. Thank you, sir.
So, thank you all for the opportunity just to be here and catch up. I really appreciate that. I know I've met you all at the very first one, but it was very brief. So, a little bit about myself. I am a very transparent but informal type individual. So, if I'm in the middle of saying something, you got a question, just hit me and say, Mitch, can you explain that in more detail? That's just who I am, and I appreciate that kind of communication because it makes sure that we stay on track and we get all questions answered. So,
Awesome.
But excited to be here. I've been in the interim role, I guess. It feels like it's maybe been a year, but it's probably been maybe a month.
Mm-hmm.
And really diving into a lot of things with strategic plan, I think really is going to steer a lot of the conversation tonight as we talk about small business and some other things. So I'll jump in and just kind of give you some brief history. My first week on the job, I think we had a meeting out around small business with Rock Hill, Chamber of Commerce, and a few other partners. So I thought, with the conversations that we had, it'd be really important to have some of those partners sit around the table tonight, especially as we dive into that. And so Dean, Jason, thank you both for being here. And they can probably add a little bit more to the discussion as well. But after that first month, it really led into the next week of being in the first session for strategic planning. And as we talked about economic opportunities, and I printed out a copy of the economic development side of things, as well as strategic plan. Josh, as he was really explaining the process of what he was hoping to accomplish, and really outlining council's priorities, small business was a big topic of conversation. And so it lined up really well that we were already having conversations with the Chamber, Rock Hill, some other partners, and then leading right into trying to think about priorities as it relates to small business and what role does York County economic development play in the county as a whole play. So informally, I just want to bring up what we've been discussing from a partnership level with the Chamber, with Rock Hill, and then call on Dean and Jason really speak to specifics and give you the opportunity to ask questions of what that means. And so in some of our conversations, we've talked about the development of a small business resource guide, something that can be done online, that if someone's looking to start a business, they would know the process of, hey, if you're in Rock Hill, here's what you need to do in terms of, essentially if you're developing a business plan, you go to the Small Business Development Center. If you're looking at permitting, here's your contact, here's your point of contact. If you're looking at real estate, here are opportunities, and direct them to a website that essentially helps them through that process.
Yep.
We've talked about things from a procurement level, connecting some of our local businesses, small businesses in particular, into potentially being vendors in with the government and what that might look like. We've talked about doing an inventory of our downtowns. If we are going to look at maybe incentives, which I know can be a deeper conversation, before we ever even get to that point, are incentives even warranted? If we wanted to look at like a facade grant program, what's the intention behind it, and is there a real need behind it? I look at a place like York, for instance. Maybe there's an opportunity that we could do an assessment on vacancy rates in downtown York and really see if something like that might be warranted in the impact that it might have before we just go off and say we're going to go create a program.
Sure.
And then lastly, and Dean has really been great explaining opportunities that he sees in terms of businesses that are coming into the Chamber and some of those needs as it relates to employee training. There could be some avenue and space that we could really jump in to say, through our partnerships with the Chamber, through Rock Hill, through some other avenues, maybe we could look at really that customer service element and enhancing an experience as someone goes into a small business by giving some adequate training and being a partner in that process. So, with that being said, Dean, I'm going to call on you first. I know that we had a great conversation this week about this resource guide.
Sure.
And Jason, if you want to tap into that, because I know Eduardo in your department has really kind of started that process that I think can be replicated over here in York County. But go ahead, Dean.
Sure, thanks, Mitch. Appreciate y'all having me. So last fall, I had the opportunity to facilitate the Catawba County, North Carolina Chamber and Community strategic planning process that they were having. I don't know if they got anything from my job being there facilitating that, But one thing they talked about and bragged about was a small business toolkit. And so I took pictures of their screens and got a copy of it and thought, well, this is great because we had been talking about it here. And we've got 3 interns that start this next week at the Chamber. 2 students from Winthrop, 1 from Clinton College, and one of their first projects will be this small business toolkit. And it's all digital. When Catawba County did it, and Lindsay said she'd kind of connect us, our folks, with who did that, who coordinated that up there in Catawba County. So we'll pretty much be able to kind of just rip off, duplicate that, just, change it from North Carolina entities to South Carolina entities, or Catawba County to York County entities, and kind of fill in all the blocks. The Lenore College and the Technical College there kind of helped them with some of that, but from what I could tell, the legwork was really, they were just providing some students that were kind of doing that. So I feel like our interns, I've made Celeste aware of it. Celeste will be, she's coordinating our internship program. So our goal is to have that done by at least a good solid draft of it by the end of the year. I could see that as something that would be housed, on our website, on y'all's website, on RHEDC's website if y'all want it, Jason. And the cool thing about it is it's an open platform enough that, let's say there's the procurement process at the county or the permitting process at the county. If you guys want to build that out more, our interns can kind of work with your folks to kind of do that. So then when it opens up on the digital page, it would have more of that content. The way Catawba County did it, the only cost they had involved, and in this case, I don't know if it was the county or Lenore Ryan that footed the bill, but they also printed some hard copies so that they would just be available at the Chamber office. It was available for their economic development folks to pass out, their visitor group if they wanted. But really the beauty of it was the digital one, because it had the hot links to different things. I mean, even down to things like a new startup business registering their name with the Secretary of State's office. It's a click right there, they go right to it. Clicking on the Small Business Development Center, having the Small Business Development Center has a number of resources like how to do a business plan or that sort of thing. So I think that's a good, easy item to have. I think it will be as good as all of us want to make it, or it could be as simple and non-useful as we want it. But our goal is to have the interns really kind of get started and build out something to be of a value, and then take it from there. That's that on that resource guide. Mitch, did you want me to talk about any of the other items you touched on?
Next door.
Yeah, I think, Jason, if you want to touch on that side with what Rock Hill's doing, I think just jump into like the training.
Okay, all right.
Great.
Yeah, sure. No, well, first, thank you for having me, Mitch, Josh. It's good to see you all again. Feels like old times, but it's very good just to be in this environment to talk to you all and work with you all. So excited to be here to share a little bit about what Rock Hill's doing. As you know, Rock Hill has been in the small business support sort of space for many years, going back to at least 2012 when RHEDC stood up the technology incubator in College Park. And through those activities, we're really focused more, not necessarily just general small business support, but really growing technology-oriented businesses and entrepreneurs in that space, with the idea that they would grow and scale in Rock Hill and then extend out to the larger county. A lot of those activities were a transition over to the Gravity Center a few years ago, and the venture mentoring services and the programs that were housed in that incubator kind of went over there. And so with that, there was an idea that RHEDC still want to support those efforts, but also broaden small business support to more of just your traditional small business, mom and pop type of operations, and be citywide, not necessarily focused in on downtown or Knowledge Park. And so there are several goals that RHEDC has related to specific initiatives for small business. We do have an individual, Eduardo Venegas, on staff that is tasked with these RHEDC goals in small business, as well as placemaking. You may know him. He was with the Small Business Development Center for many years while he was at Winthrop, and went to York Tech, and was most recently the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance doing business recruitment for the region. but he's really working on this day to day for our office, and part of that was trying to coordinate and just get together all the groups in the county that are thinking about small business and small business support. So that meeting that Mitch mentioned on his first week in the job was one that Eduardo kind of pulled together to just get everybody talking. Very informal, just what are y'all doing, what do you think needs to happen, those kind of things. And the idea of just a shared business resource guide came up, and so he took that on as a task to put together, and I can just pass this around, give you an idea of where we are right now with that. The idea would be that wherever you go, and I think similar to what you just described in terms of your resource guide, you would sort of know all the entities and players in the county and maybe even the state and the region, what services they provided, very streamlined, what service they provided, and then they would be getting that information no matter where they started their journey in terms of small business. So whether it be at the county, Rock Hill, Chamber, Small Business Development Center, COG, where you name it. So that's just something we've been working on. We met last week, just kind of informally talking about these topics. We brought in the Small Business Development Center, and there's more work to be done on that. We want the next step would be just to go through and make sure we vet all those organizations to make sure that we're accurate in what we're saying, if we're missing anything, and then also I think it'll be a tool to help identify any gaps. So if there are any gaps or services there, then we can sort of try to figure out what as a community we need to sort of build up. So that's it on that. I don't know if you want to go into anything else, but that's on the business resource kind of efforts.
Yeah, so we talked about the toolkit and resource guide, and I think those are easy lists that collaboratively we can work together with our partners. We've dove in a little deeper, and I talked about one, looking at how do we interface with business, how do we interface with small business. Kevin's already had a great conversation with the Small Business Development Center about a procurement matchmaking type event, and Small Business Development Center has been sitting at that table. When I think bigger picture, one of the key initiatives that we wanted to focus on under supporting and promoting initiatives that strengthen small businesses, creation of a small business council. I think that's already kind of in the works. Inadvertently, I don't know if you guys realized that you were doing that, but I think it's the makings of something that we can build upon that already has some key players in it at the table right now. So I wanted to get perspective of that. Dean, I'd love for you to talk about the training side too. This is probably a little bit more visioning out over the course of the next year to 2 years to beyond, but I think that's a piece that really we can play a big role in if it's done right and we find the right partners and understand what the costs might be associated with that. But you had some great ideas on the training.
Well, the one thing, when I started 3 years ago, I kind of felt like the chamber was trying to be, doing stuff for small business is tough because there's so many different types of small businesses. And the chamber was trying to be something to everybody. And so we were a mile wide and an inch deep. And so we said, we really need to lean into what we're good at. We knew we had a 35-plus year leadership training program that everybody kind of looked to us as and said, hey, they do that right. We were respected in that space. So we leaned into the leadership space, knowing that every business, no matter how big or how small, they have people on their staff, they have turnover, and those folks need leadership development in some way, shape, or form. And so we've got really 4 different leadership programs going right now, but we've even got customized leadership training that we can go into a company and provide that. The number one training that I believe is in need for small business is customer service training. You go into just about any small business and how many times do you see, on their Google reviews, a bad review, and it's almost always around customer service. Statesville, North Carolina, Rowan County. For a couple of years, it's been about every other year, they got a key sponsor in their community to kind of help them. And it was the chamber and the county and this particular private investor group. And they brought the Disney Institute folks in. And they did a robust 2-day customer service training, had over 200 businesses represented there, just top shelf quality stuff. The problem with it on the surface of it, it's a scary, daunting task for an organization like us because the price tag starts at about $45,000 to $50,000. Now, if you break it down, you get 200 people there, you go, well, you can do the math and you can make the numbers work. But, the scary thing for us would be, that's a whole lot of money to put on the line if you had 10 people show up instead of 200 people show up. I think that, bringing the lady over or going up and meeting with her, I'm blanking on her name, Teresa, I had one of those moments. I'm going to say it's a senior moment, but it might be. But going up there and meeting with her, she could kind of lay out, how that's worked, what's worked well. But I think that could be a good program. And with what we're already doing, I think a lot of businesses are looking to come that way. Mitch and I have been working with Andy Clinton with Visit York County. We've got some shared activity that we're looking at. And you think about who really needs that training, it's that hospitality sector. And all those businesses, all the restaurants, all the hotels are already involved in Visit York County. So with us already kind of partnering with them, if we bring them in, there's no reason why we couldn't do this over at Winthrop University in a big space and really have a big crowd. And based on what I've heard, it's very impactful. So I think that could be a cool thing to look at down the road. We could start with a few small ones from some of the Covey training that we've done, our partnership with Winthrop University in implementing the Honors College. We have an all-access pass. We purchased that for Winthrop, and it gives us access to all the Covey content. So we could certainly look at something next year, kind of leaning toward that, kind of test the water, see what the appetite is. With the following year, looking at maybe bringing in the Disney Institute. So it kind of gives us some lead up and ramp up time to see if that would make sense. But that was kind of been my vision of where we would be our next thing with our training, and I can certainly see how it aligns well with what you guys are looking to do here. So partnering and working together on it to me seems to make sense. So that was my thoughts.
So I've got a quick question. Do you guys have any questions so far? Yes, I do. Okay.
Me too.
Well, go ahead first. I'll let you guys.
Ladies first.
Oh, great.
There you go.
Well, a couple of us are small business owners, and we've had some of the same questions kind of along the way. So my question for you, Dean, is, and you used to have small business.
Yes, ma'am, 17
Because I used
years.
to send everybody to you that needed a picture for a locket.
I appreciate it. Did a lot of passport photos
Yeah.
too.
So when you're talking about what the chamber is going to do, are you looking at your membership, or are you looking at a broader? You're looking at a broader.
Really looking at a broader thing. It's just like when we came back and when it made the decision to hire Celeste. A lot of the work that we see transitioning, particularly things like this customer service training. Every business needs it, and the chamber has about 18 to 20% penetration rate, and that's kind of the national average. So we know we're not going to touch every business and enough of them to have the kind of impact that a county government needs to have. I mean, if y'all are going to attach your name to something, it needs to be opened up in a much broader way. So we're looking to move, most of our leadership training, we've already moved under our foundation, which is 501c3. And it's a better place for it. We can go after grant funding and do things like that.
And so I think for the three of y'all, my question is, what does small business encompass? I mean, you mentioned, the Visit York County and the I guess visitor and that, but when you talk about small business, there's a bubble, and I just want to know, I want to understand what's in that bubble. What do y'all see in that bubble?
I think it's a great question, and I think that's probably the first thing that this group, and I say this group meaning y'all, has to define, because it's what we faced at the chamber when we would try to do it and we try to offer it up to everybody. You have a lunch and learn, you thought, man, everybody needs this. And we have 8 or 9 people show up, But when we would target it to a certain sector, then you'd have 25 or 30 show up. So I think you're spot on, Allison. I don't know what that definition may be. I know if we talk to John Bloomberg, for their definition, it's what? Up to 500 employees or something like
It depends on
that?
industry you're
Right.
in, so
Yeah.
it's all over.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
500 employees,
Yeah.
several million.
Historically, from a chamber perspective, we've kind of looked at small business as 25 and less employees, or 49 or less, kind of It's kind of dependent, but we kind of looked at it from an employee count standpoint, you know, but I think you got to define it. I think you're right.
And I think a way we can do that is, we already are having these conversations with what I would call that council, is start to define it in that role and bring it back here with what the suggestions are. Because collectively, it's us coming up with, where do we see our time best well spent and who needs the most help?
And how do you know what those businesses need? Like, how do you know, how do you differentiate between what an insurance agent might need versus a retail store versus, you know, somebody, a dry cleaners? How do you encompass everybody, and how do you determine what, you know, we talk about customer service. Well, everybody needs customer service. Everybody needs customer service. But you know what? A lot of people don't know they don't realize they need.
Oh, no, the ones that would go are the ones doing it well.
Right,
The ones that won't
that's
go
right.
won't show up.
Yeah.
No, you're
So,
exactly right.
But how do you differentiate the needs of those different businesses, you know, and then you've got different age businesses. You've got startup businesses, and you've got those that have been in business and, you know, are on the upswing. You've got some that are on the downswing, and then you've got long-term businesses. And I noticed on that brochure at the very bottom, that yellow, let me see that, Kevin. If I'm reading this correctly, so you've got all across the bottom, and then you've got, let's see, there was one of the categories that I thought was, under people, you got all businesses, but you don't have anything marked under people. So maybe I'm misinterpreting this.
Markings on the other,
It's the same.
here's the people page.
Like the people page, but that's for educational partners. So I'm talking about here, where we're talking about all businesses, there's just people. People is the number one problem. You know, everybody's got a people problem, whether they got the wrong people or too many people or not enough people. So it's just interesting to me that nothing in that box is. I just want to be sure that the people who are working on this, I mean, there's nothing more important than hands-on.
Sure.
And so I've always looked at this as, I'm a hands-on person. I own a small business that is hard,
Yep.
and harder sometimes than others. So sometimes I sit around a table like this and I listen to what people envision as a need or a want or a service, and it's just it's off base, and that's what I worry about, it not hitting that target.
We had a great conversation. I'll say this, and I know that you couldn't be there for the last one, you were sick, but we talked about a series of outreach events, whether it was survey related or actually getting out and going from place to place across the county and really being intentional to go have these conversations. Because that's the only way we're going to get true information, is if we can have this one-on-one.
So I've written down survey also, and how would you survey, and
I think a combination of surveys and focus groups
Yeah.
would be good. And Alice and I agree. I remember as a small business owner, serving as a volunteer on the Rock Hill Chamber at that time, Small Business Council. And I just wanted to run my head through the wall after every meeting, because everybody had an idea of what I ought to be doing as a small business owner. I was like, man, it's just not reality, you know.
Right.
And so I hear you. You know, from our perspective at the chamber, we know that it's going to fall in one of three buckets. It's either going to be helping a business cultivate and develop their leaders within their organization, finding and retaining talent, because that's what we hired Celeste to do. And then we see that this customer service training kind of fits right in to those two buckets. But beyond that, you know, we're not going to get into trying to help them identify how to go get lending and find money. That's not our space. And so, you know, that's why we think the toolkit, we think the resource guide that
Yeah.
Jason and I are working on are both good things, because we want to be able to point to somebody and say, that's not our space. Now, I will say this, I told Mitch this the other day, you know, don't come to me and asking me to help startups in years 0 to 2 years. You know, they're very, very hard, and they all have such a high demand of need, and the failure rate is so great. You know, it's just, we just don't have the bandwidth to spend. You know, I hate to say it, it's cruel. You know, Allison, I don't know about you, but you know, there was nobody that I could really turn to the first 2 years of my 17 years in business.
Right.
And most that I find that are successful, they're hustling and figuring out on their own in those first 2 years. They're not coming.
Listen, I'm 25 years in and still hustling and doing it.
Right, no, I get it.
But I want to tell y'all a story. This was BD, this was before Dean. I was a member of the chamber.
He did.
And I'm not a member of the chamber now.
We're not
I'm
gonna use
not
that
a big
outside this
advocate of the
room.
chamber right now either, so you got a chance to win me over
All
again.
right.
But I was a chamber member, and I was on the, Danny Funderburk was working for me, and we would attend those meetings, and we had a small business group, all small business, and I set out to, bring more small businesses, Dan Nichols, and, Mr. Love that owned the Honey Baked Ham. I mean, I was rounding up these businesses to come to these meetings, and so we're in there, and I started thinking, they're off base, they're not, the people that are running these meetings, well, we had a professor, winter professor running that meeting, and she doesn't know anything about small business. She might teach business, but she doesn't know the reality of small business. And the day that I had said, you need to go to the Galleria and go around to all the businesses and get you had one member from the Galleria, out of everybody at the Galleria at that time. And so the next meeting, Walmart joined, and I'm like, I think they missed the point. So Danny and I, that was our last meeting.
They were at the Galleria. That was about all you could say for that?
Yeah, they were there, but they weren't small business. So it's just, I just think that a lot of times small business is undefined and misunderstood, and so it makes it hard for me. So I'm really looking for something that's convincing. I love the idea of the resource guide. I think that's a great thing. The other thing that happens when you talk about tourism, let me say that for the retail stores, if you're not a restaurant or you're not a park or something like that, a retail store is, come see me, we're dead that week because they don't come see us. And so that's something that I think that you need to know, because when people do come to see somebody in Rock Hill for that week, how are you going to help those small businesses that are looking for somebody just to come shop? And so it just concerns me that target is not always a direct hit.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from anyone's time, but I think it's really important that even Teresa is here, because you talk about existing business and how important it is to the relationships. It's going to be really important for us to be intentional, to get out in the public, hold community meetings, having stakeholder engagement from that side, and really understand what the needs are of those businesses, so we know how to better serve them. And that's economic development 101, but this is on a deeper level with small business. And so that's something that's important to me, I know important to us, is we all have sat around over the course of the past few months talking about, what involvement we can have in that.
From the manufacturing side of things, I visit the small fabrication shops, machine shops that have 1 or 2, 3, 4, or 5 employees, sometimes just 2. I provide them some resources for help them with their manufacturing, like South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership. We come in and talk anything from the South Carolina Department of Commerce has to offer, like recycling. That's our resource for the small businesses to try to help them. I used to hear, well, you can only, you help with their taxes when a new company comes in here. There's no help for me. We can't, and there's not, as far as, your taxes and that sort of thing. So that's the feedback that I get.
Well, that's good all feedback is good feedback, no matter what, whatever form it comes in. Hey, go ahead, Bud, you had some questions.
All right, appreciate it.
I'm sorry, Allison, were you saying?
No, I'm fine.
You good? Okay.
All right. So since this topic came up, I've struggled with this topic from the beginning, and you and I've talked about it. We met about it at least twice. Like Allison, my struggle was identifying what is a small business. From an economic development perspective, small businesses start with a fee in lieu at 10 million and up. So to me, if we're looking at small business, there's somewhere 10 million in revenue down. But if you get down to the bottom, going back to what you said earlier, I said this at a council meeting just a month ago, that the first 7 years, there are very few companies that make it through the first 7 years. Is that a market we want to go after? I don't think so. What's our objective as a county? Our objective as a county is to get businesses to generate tax revenue. Selfishly, that's what we're in this for, I would think. You may want to say you're in it because you want to help businesses, but that ain't going to get council members to approve something if it is not backed with generating taxes. So you said something very interesting, 2 things interesting a second ago. You said what do businesses need? And I would say that having multiple businesses here in town, I own other businesses throughout the Carolinas, but let's just take my insurance industry my insurance business as an example. I've been in business 34 years. What I think I have in common with a lot of other people here in York County is this. I am blessed to have built an insurance agency to where it is today. And it's not embarrassing for me to admit that this business can grow between 10 and 20% a year pretty easily, 30%, getting out and working, and our advisors know how to put business on the books. But is my company scalable? My company is scalable. Am I the guy to take my company and scale it? Well, in 34 years, I haven't scaled it like somebody else was telling me they can do in 10 years. I'm not going to tell you what my company's worth, but, I got somebody who's telling me that he can scale my company to a $100 million company. Something to think about, right? So the question is, how? How is he going to take a company I've been in for 34 years and scale it from where it is to where he thinks it can be? And you're touching on it right now, Dean. So you're talking about Covey, right? So as I've thought about this, and I have put a lot of thought into this, Tom and I've talked a fair amount about it. I've talked to the Gravity Center, the guys, the angel investors and all. I've spoken to them one-on-one, some of them. Risk and reward. We don't need to risk too much of our money, but we definitely would like the reward. So here's what I think we might ought to focus on, possibly. The businesses that, when we go in and evaluate them, somebody that truly wants to grow their business, they just don't know how to take it from here to the next step. And I'm going through it right now. I hired a consultant. I'm going through this right now, and I'm telling you, I just went through our first strategic plan ever in 34 years. We just finished it yesterday. And I'm sitting in a room, a business that I built, and I've exceeded my expectations of what I thought we would do, 30-some-odd employees. And I mean, I'm listening to other people talk about what they'd like to see done in our business. I mean, I cried a couple of times. It was overwhelming to realize that it's not just about me, it's really about them. And when it becomes about them, you have the opportunity to really grow something, and then you get the right people in the right seats. What I'm getting at is, I think there's a model that you could pursue on businesses' behalf that allows us to help a business help themselves grow their companies, which will grow our tax base. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned hospitality. I don't know where you were going with hospitality, but I'm going to share something with you with hospitality. Years ago, I had somebody come to me, wanted me to start a staffing company for hospitality. But it wasn't just a staffing company for hospitality. I don't know if this is where you're going, because you were talking about customer service. Well, this individual came to me and said, hospitality. He said, I want you to think about something. You go out of town today and you go somewhere, where are you likely going to go when you hit that town? I'm going to ask you all a question.
Eat.
Yeah. So the first impression you're going to have in the area where you go is with the person who's waiting on you. That's actually a pretty important person, isn't it? Maybe you go to the hotel first. And when you go to the hotel first, who's the first person you meet?
Front desk.
Everywhere you go, the first person you meet is pretty dadgum important, your impression of that area, isn't it? So if you're a business that you're trying to recruit to Rock Hill, York County, and they're coming in and they go to the hotel and they check in and they have a crappy experience, and they go eat and they have a crappy experience, does that help or hurt you? Just like the schools. Are the schools good, mediocre, or poor? It has an impact. Affordable housing has an impact. All these things have an impact. So I didn't want to get into a side business at the time, and I still don't want to get into it. But I think that what this person said to me was, he said, we should have a certification program in York County and teach people how to be exceptional in the hospitality industry. All touches of the hospitality industry, because it directly impacts the culture of this county. And I believe it's true. And I'll tell you, I'll give you the information, you can call him, he'll give you his work. But I didn't know where you were going with hospitality. I hear what you're saying about customer service. I won't get off on a tangent there, but I'm just not sure the customer service of the past is the customer service of today, right? It's not the same, right? But anyway, 2 cents worth, going back to the beginning, if that makes sense. I think that if we could put a model together that took a successful company, whether it's a $5 million, $10 million company, and we help them go to 5 to 10 and 10 to 20 or whatever, and I think that's a wise investment.
That is pretty much the mandate that John Bloomberg has with Small Business Development Center. Their job is to help scale business, to create jobs, and to create additional tax revenue. So I think if that's a space, it might not be bad to have him come and meet with this group and kind of say.
Well, I'm just one
what-
opinion,
Yeah,
one opinion,
but-
but I'm struggling to get behind this, because I don't think we should play around with taxpayers' dollars. It's easy to when it's not our money, believe me.
And I totally agree, and this is an area, and I said this to Mitch yesterday, I said, I probably am more prone to agree with Allison than not in this particular space, because we share that common small business ownership framework. And I've been in chamber work for 21 years. I'll be the first to admit, I have not found a chamber yet that's crushing this space. Because the people that are working inside the chamber buildings typically have not owned a small business. And it's just, so there's just something about it. I totally agree. So I'd love for us to figure out and try some things that might work.
I'll just chime in. John is who visited me Monday to go over their procurement matchmaker event, which I really appreciate. He got wet in. That event's going to be in May. They've got a training session for the vendors to make sure it's meaningful, because Michael, you know this, we tried to do this. We're going through a lot of our construction, and we just had poor attendance. He's going to vet it to make sure we get, it's,
SBDC?
yeah, SBDC, okay? And one thing, it's funny, John said, he said one of the things that he won't do, he won't endorse, is giving businesses money. I think that's not the right thing. And what Dean touched on is what they drive. They want to scale these businesses to help them scale. And I would add to what you mentioned, I think we always want to develop our tax base, but I also would think that one of the driving forces, you get a business to scale like that, you're going to have places for our children to work. You want an economy that's thriving, and that means businesses are growing and hiring and reinvesting their money. And as I listen to this conversation, and I think back to my conversation Monday or other conversations we've had in the yard talking, I do think John should be in these discussions and part of that committee or council you're going to put together
Yeah,
agreed.
to make more meaningful, because everything he's ever talking about lines up exactly with what y'all are saying. And really, Dean, and what you and Watts have echoed, I think he's very much in line with that. And, there are people a lot smarter than me, or Josh, or our council members that need to help drive and steer this, and ultimately they educate y'all into making informed decisions as to where, if we want to invest money, what the best way to do that is, because we have to have some kind of desired goal. I think that's what you're getting at, Watts, is what's our desired goal of this? And is there a way to get there with tax dollars money? And, I've enjoyed listening back to this discussion for the longest I've sat in the meeting without speaking up. But I do think having John at the table would be very fruitful as well.
So one other comment, last thing I'm going to say is this. I joined council 18 months ago, 19, however long it was, but I think that before we get too far off in focus on something that distracts us from what we're here to do, Mitch is here as the interim director to help lead us in economic development here in York County. You are in Rock Hill to help lead economic development in Rock Hill. We need to get back to the reason we're sitting at this table, and that needs to be the part of the conversation. This, in my opinion, is a secondary conversation, right?
I agree.
We need to be bringing in the right type of industry, the right type of industry that pays us the right amount of wages, that hires the people and gets the children to stay here. That's what we need to get back to. So whatever it takes for us to get back to that conversation, that's the conversation I'd like us to be discussing first, along with while we work on this. This is an investment in the future. I'm talking about what we need to be doing for today.
So-
I want to add, I
Yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
add one
Go
thing
ahead.
to that, and I think, you have to be really careful when government talks about tax base and the fact that we want to help businesses to increase the tax base. If you came knocking on my door at my store and said, hey, I'm here to help you because I'm with the county or I'm with the city of Rock Hill, and, we'd like to increase our tax base, I'd
Well, that's
say,
not the approach.
I'd say, but that's what we're talking about, that's
You
what
would
we're
have
talking
to- No, we're
about.
not, no, we're not. And you would have
That's what we're
to,
talking about.
no, it's not. It's not what we're talking about. And if you're not interested in changing or growing your business, you're not a candidate for this. And you would have to be able to, determine whether someone meets the criteria to be that. It wouldn't be that approach, of course not.
Yeah, but you've mentioned tax base a few times, and you've
Yes, I
mentioned tax
have,
base a
because
few
that's
times.
your objective. Your objective is to increase the tax base. Why else would you invest taxpayers' money in anything that's not going to create a reward?
Yeah, so,
All right.
so let me, are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Good discussion we got going on here. So so the way I look at it, I think that I compartmentalize this in a couple different ways, right? I think that what you spoke about is part of the big picture, right? I think it's important. But I think there's also a piece of this thing that's really important. And the fact is that we've got people that have entrepreneurship in their soul. They want to be an entrepreneur. They want to start something from scratch, right? To go out there. I think that this toolkit that you spoke of, I think is the first step. Again, we're not pushing money out through the toolkit. We're not giving out grants. We're not giving out funding through this toolkit. All we're doing is we're doing resourcing for them. We're educating them, right? And it may be the education, and maybe we can, maybe there's a tool in there that identifies market analysis, right? Maybe there's a tool in here that helps them, obviously, walks them through the process, start a business, small business, where to do, the paperwork to fill out, it's like, those simple things. Funding, places to go for them to go look for the funding, right? But at the end of the day, we can eventually get to these other pieces, but this is not going to extend out, this is not going to be an impact to the taxpayers. This is going to be an educational session for them to get their foot in the ground, where they can stick the flag in the ground and say, I've gone through my paperwork, I've gone through my process, I know where to go for processing, I got some market analysis, I got information to go ahead and get started. And I think that part of it is solely missing in this area. And I think that we, as a small, thinking from an entrepreneurship, because I've got a lot of friends that want to start a small business, 5 and 10 people. They want to get something going, but they don't know where to start. I think the toolkit knocks it out of the park. And I think this is something we can introduce and we can get it launched out there. The SBDC, I got reached out about having a meeting with them. I think this is good. I think this, again, ties into the resource tool, right? Where they can tie into their conversations. I also think that we need to also tie in York Tech, the Winthrop University, into this resource tool. If somebody wants to start a welding business, well, they can go understand how they can identify that through a welding program at Winthrop. But we have one repository for everything. Look, I think your ideations are good as far as long-term, as far as the next step, but I think we need to start from the basics. And a lot of people want the basics, and I think this tool could be so robust that it gives them the foundational information they need to get started without any taxpayer dollars that are being pushed out
I
to
think we're in
fund.
agreement on that, aren't you?
Yeah, to fund us.
That's a given.
Excellent. Now, the other piece of this thing that I wanted to mention is us hearing people, right? I think when we design, when this toolkit is designed, whatever technology is going to be used for this website, I think we need to incorporate the ability to pull in feedback from the public in this. And it goes back to you, it goes back to you, it goes back to SBDC. And I don't know what role the COG would play in this, but if we could tie in the COG at the same time, somehow tie them into that toolkit and have them feel that, you yield some of it, and you can direct it. The other piece of this, and this is my last comment, is that if you've got we've got an ability to social media this well, all right? I think we need to really be strategic about how we market this toolkit and hit every avenue on this thing. And then as we, look, and I'm in technology, so we obviously, we work in AI all the time at AT&T. Now, AI can have an ability to hallucinate, so you want to make sure you're giving it some good data. But if we do it right, we can simply have them ask a question, and it can make it as easy as possible to guide them through this site. So I think this site is really important. I think we need to be very strategic about it, but I think we all agree that this would be a good first step. So that's my feedback. Is that?
Yeah, it's good.
It's good. It's good. It's good stuff. All right. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to know tell me about this flyer right here. I know this lady. So what, was this a,
That was in
what,
a local magazine.
Yeah, it was, she was used in the, I guess, the lifestyle guide for, between York County Economic Development and Visit York County. So
okay,
as we incorporated the goals and strategies for the strategic plan, that was just an easy include because we already had the photos, had the permission to use the photos.
because she's a startup.
Yeah.
She's a ground floor startup,
Yeah.
struggling business. So she really doesn't fit what we've said we would like to focus on. So,
Well, I mean, foundationally, people are going to come to start new
for
business.
the first part, for the
Right.
part that we all agree on.
Right,
But
right.
when you get down into, what a small business encompass, and we're talking about maybe not supporting startups because they may not make it past 7 years or something. She's the example of one that is way less than 7 years old.
Well, and I would encourage y'all to look at the overall focus of the goal itself too. And I think it's more than just being a startup. I think, she's a community member that's focused on growing a business, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I just thought of one more thing. I think testimonies are going to be really great on this website too, to inspire people that have small business willing to do testimonies on them. I think that's good. The other thing is, now that we all agree on that, what is the time frame do you think we could launch something like a toolkit out there?
Well, the work that our interns will be doing will be over the balance of this year. So I can certainly kind of report back, keep you and Mitch kind of in the loop of the progress on their work.
Okay.
I don't think by the end of the year they're necessarily going to have a finished product that you're going to be ready to throw on the website. I would hope that we would have at least a kind of a skeleton of something that we could go, okay, we're on the right track, this is looking good, how do we finish it off? With kind of the PR side of that,
Okay.
with things like testimonials and
Okay,
added.
so by the end of the year,
But we should at least be in a position where I can report back and say, and show you something, if it's a
Okay.
work in progress or complete or not.
And then we can put in our say, everybody's site right to market it out.
And understand,
Linkable.
I don't see what we're doing as reaching that finished product.
Mhm.
We're just trying
It's
to
gonna
get
evolve.
started
It's gonna evolve.
and kind of
Well,
have
that's the
something
thing. I don't-
available to y'all.
Right, I don't think we're ever, because this thing is gonna evolve this site, this toolkit, but I think if we get a baseline and we launch it, and then we'll continue to evolve it, I think that's where we're gonna roll with it, so. Okay, cool. All right, good deal. All right, next thing. Strategic plans, priorities.
It's a great discussion. I anticipate this one to be very brief.
Okay.
But you have in front of you the strategic plan that was approved by council. This is specifically looking at economic development and growth opportunities. And so I know we talk about in there the initiatives of promoting economic vibrancy, investing in quality of life, promoting small business and community engagement, and we get into some initiatives. What I really want to focus on here with this committee, specifically the 3 council members that serve, and I'm going to be reaching out to you individually, but I want it to be part of a healthier conversation as we look at the next meeting and future meetings. Really honing in to say, what are the priorities of this council, this committee specifically, if we're going to make recommendations or do specific initiatives, and what's the line of sight back to why we're actually doing this.
Right.
And so I think about, for instance, traditional economic development. if we want to talk about the future of a business park. You know, we can just throw out ideas of where we might want to go buy land, but what we can do on our end is, if we say we want to go do an actual study internally within our department to look at the top 10 business sites in York County and work directly with engineering, water, sewer infrastructure, different departments, Rock Hill, wherever it may be, to get the right information so that when we talk about it, we're ready to look at making an informed decision that we can point back and say, you know, if we go out and buy this site, it's going to really focus on revenue generation, job creation, and really looking at economic competitiveness on this level. And we can speak to those initiatives as to why this matters. I think as we get into the small business side of things, to me, it's going to be really helpful for me and our staff to really understand that, you know, if we're getting into the depths, if we're going to go do something, what problem does it solve? And are we going to be better for it, or maybe not better for it, before we just go off and go try to bite off an initiative and say, we're going to go do it because we said small business. I just want to be really direct in saying, to me, as I go through the plan, these are things that really stood out to me when I think big level picture about why we're doing it and why it matters. And so, you know, I want to email that to you. If I'm missing something, I want your honest feedback and we can tweak that. But I think in general, just as I look to build a program of work and what we're going to do within our department, I want to make sure we're hitting on this level right here so we know that we're going to be effective.
I love that.
Yeah, I like it.
Good thought, man.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And then just so you all know from the process side, we're going to be talking about 2 strategic plan goals per workshop this year. So we're going to use all the workshops this year. So the first one up in October, we're going to have 2 goals. One is going to be economic development. The other is going to be high performing organization. So we're going to have the leaders of our goals from our organization there. We're going to have similar conversations like we just had with small business, but with the full council to talk about what y'all's priorities are in the plan. And so that's going to give you all an update from staff about what we're working on in the plan, get y'all's feedback on that, and then talk about next steps. So this is a great first conversation to get you all on board, and then we'll probably have a very similar conversation like this at the workshop in October. So we're excited about y'all digging in and then helping with that conversation with the broader council in October as well.
What was the first part? The first one was,
High performing organization and economic development are the 2.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's perfect. Any questions, guys? Okay, cool. Approval of minutes for January 24th and July 23rd.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from July the 24th and July the 23rd Economic Development Committee meetings.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, excellent. All right, executive session. Should we go ahead and read that up, or you want?
Oh, well, so, yeah, I make a motion that we go into executive session for economic development projects update.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, we had no motions coming out of executive session. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Let me make one comment, and then yes, I'd love to adjourn and go home. Is there any value in us intentionally creating a dashboard with our strategic partners, Duke Power, York Electric, York Natural Gas, so forth and so on, creating a dashboard of capacity so that as we really get intentional about what we're looking at from the economic development perspective, we know exactly what we can and we can't do, even water and sewer.
I'll start. For me, we're jumping to solutions, and I don't know what the problem is, but the way I would answer this is, we've got an initiative in here to look at our infrastructure needs
Okay.
with multiple departments, and that's where I want to start, and economic development is part of that. I think we need to think about our infrastructure needs across the county, who's doing what capacity we have across all sorts of those. But yeah, we're in conversations with all of our partners about their capacity as we have things considering moving to York County. But more specifically, we need to get more strategic and think about how do our infrastructure growth plans connect in terms of economic development.
Okay.
And so I don't think the comp plan and economic development talk right now, if that's a quick way to answer.
That's good.
I'd rather start with that and bring partners into that, and then I think we get to where you're heading. I like where you're heading.
You validated another reason why we all agreed to hire you. So motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.